Hello and welcome to It's About Youth with me, Faye Kwan, where we look into issues that matter to Malaysia's younger generation. Now, reading and storytelling can have a profound impact on our youth, fostering critical thinking skills and empowerment. But how exactly do stories shape the minds and future of children around the world? Joining me on the show today are two guests at the forefront of promoting literacy and a love for books among children. They are Nina Suatan, Senior Advisor and Project Leader for Book Start at the Swedish Arts Council, as well as Datuk Redza, Ahmad Khairuddin, President of the Malaysia Board on Books for Young People. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, to kick off, I'd like to ask, what were some of your personal favorite books growing up or from your childhood? And how would you say these kind of shaped your career later on? Nina, shall we start with you?
Okay. Well, one of the books that came to mind was a book by Astro, the famous Swedish author. And the title is Ronja, the Robber's Daughter.
Okay.
I don't know if it's famous here or not. Do you want me to tell something about the plot?
Yes.
Well, it's Ronja, who is a kid growing up in the middle of the forest. She lives with her parents, her family, in a big castle. And the night she was born, the castle was split into two halves by a thundering bolt. So it was very dramatic.
Okay.
And she's the only child in this part of the castle, and they're all robbers. They're a clan of robbers. And in the other half, there's another clan of robbers moving in, and they also have one child, Birk. And they're rivalries, so they can't befriend each other, but they do secretly. And because their friendship is not allowed, they decide to escape. So they move into the forest to support themselves and, you know, go against their families. And there's a happy ending. The two clans decide to befriend each other and everything's fine.
Okay.
So I love that book.
Slight parallel with Romeo and Juliet a little bit there. How about you, Datuk? What was your favorite storybook growing up?
Yes, I had a lot of opportunity to read, thanks to my parents who were very supportive. But being a boy, you know, I love adventures. So it was Enid Blyton's, what is that, Famous Five, that really caught my attention. And it was all those exciting adventures that really took me on a journey of imagination, wishing that I could be in them. You know, and I learned a lot, and I picked up points from there. And I think there were not less than 20 titles. So in that series, I completed every one of them. And that has a profound effect in me, in that I continue reading them till now. You know, every time I see one, and I'm like, I don't mind repeating it, because I thought the characters were real. They had good vibes. They were very well mannered. They were responsible young people, and they had a great life. So I thought that was great. Yeah. So that set me on my reading quest.
Okay, I think a lot of people in the audience would be able to relate, because both Astrid Lindgren and Enid Blyton are renowned book authors, very common to come across in all our childhoods. You know, and the fact that it's had this impact on you, for you to be able to still engage with these stories and reread them even in your adulthood. How would you say, you know, reading and engaging with stories can help translate to greater autonomy for children? Nina?
I think, for example, this book that I just told you about, I mean, it's about two children making their own choices. So it shows autonomy for children, and children as strong individuals. And I mean, reading a book can give you new perspectives of life. So you see these as examples. Okay, they do this. And this book is also a lot of, I mean, it's a big adventure, and they're very brave. So, and they face their fears. So it makes me also like, oh, I can also do that. So it's like role models, for example, is one way how it happens.
Not necessarily running away from home. With
Not
your friends.
necessarily, no.
Yeah, but then that brings into the discussion that follows after, right? Thought-provoking stories, letting children think that, you know, seeing representation in these characters and then being able to relate that to their own lives. Dr. Redza, what would you say are any key elements in creating engaging stories that can help children with this reading comprehension and then leading to that discussion later on?
Yes, I think what is important in children's stories is that it has to relate to the child. The story has to be at a level where the child can see themselves in there, being part of it. It's inclusive in that respect. And it's also inclusive with regards to their surroundings. So for example, you see in your everyday life some disabled people, and that character should be present in children's stories so that they can see that this is real. So any type of stories, as long as relatable to a child for his life or her life, that will make a good story. I always say this, the story or the book is actually like a window to the world, where it opens to the world and you see things out there. For example, books from Sweden. At the same time, it's a mirror onto yourself to see yourself, how you fit into the society or what role you play and what impact you have. So if that story can have those elements, it will be able to capture the imagination of the child and makes it a very enjoyable read. It's a journey on its own. I think that's key.
And you know, we see that, you know, the starts forming someone's character really just starts from childhood, right? And that's the power of stories. You know, and talking about books worldwide, shifting to Sweden for a little bit, Nina, what's the reading culture like for children in Sweden? Do you notice any stark differences with Malaysia?
I'm only starting to learn about the reading culture in Malaysia, so it's a bit difficult for me to do the comparison, but I would say that the reading culture in Sweden is quite strong. I mean, we have a library act stating that each municipality needs to have a public library, at least one. There are usually more than that. I think that the access to books is quite good, could always be better. And there are a lot of initiatives encouraging reading, especially among children. But even though we have this quite strong reading culture, there are still challenges. Not least from this kind of equipment that consumes the time for children and also grown-ups. So that's a big challenge, and there are other challenges as well.
Well, Dr. Redza, maybe you can speak more on behalf of the Malaysian part. How, you know, from what Nina has spoken, how does it compare with your observations in the Malaysian context? And maybe you could also outline a little bit of the challenges you notice when it comes to promoting reading among Malaysian children.
Yeah, I mean, to make a fair statement, there has been an uptick, an improvement in the reading habits of Malaysians, particularly among the younger parents and generation. But I must say that there is this socio-economic gap plus the cultural gap, a lot of gaps, you know. We find that children who are more exposed to traveling from the more affluent families, they are more exposed to reading. But the national school curriculum is so intense that it does not provide time for reading for pleasure. It's more exam-oriented. Maybe that's a point where children do not get into the habit or like for reading. So that's probably one challenge that we face. But we see more and more reading activities. There are more and more stories, storytellers. MBBY, for example, we've seen very strong interest in some of the programs that we do, and of course, MBBY through IBBY, which is a parent body, which has something like 84 countries as members. We can take examples from many countries about how they do and what they do. For example, what we have seen in recent months with the Swedish Embassy, Jom Bincang, is actually a leap forward, I think. And definitely is an eye-opener to many. The fact that a country like Sweden is interested to share what their reading culture is all about, their books and their stories. And we're finding a parallel as well as a comparison between what they have and what we have. So it is leading to some very substantive discussions, and I think it's very healthy. It's a big eye-opener, and you know, I've had discussions with Nina and some of the other colleagues who've been here before. It's always been very interesting and very invigorating, I must say. So, but there's great potential, but we have a lot of challenges to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say further collaboration is needed to sort of help bridge that gap?
Of course, I'd love to have better collaboration. Of course, I'd love if more people would take an interest into what the Swedish Embassy and BBY is doing, and there could be more discussions like this so that they can understand that this is not an additional task, rather this is a nurturing and development process for a better future. Because you start with children and young people, and when they get into the habit, I think it'll be less challenging to proceed. And it will, the spillover effect is that it will develop the industry, which is very important. As I said, stories have to relate to children. So Malaysian children will need to hear Malaysian stories by Malaysian authors or Malaysian children. Then they can relate. Then from there, they can open the window to the Swedish stories. You know? So the mirror and the window again.
And it's interesting that you highlight the long-term effects of that, how children grow up and they are the future leaders of the country. You mentioned Jom Kita Bincang. I'd like to tap into that a little bit more. But before that, let's head for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan, where today we're talking about promoting literacy and a love for books among our children. Now, the Swedish Embassy has launched Jom Kita Bincang, which is an ambitious initiative to promote reading through exhibitions. You've got books, forums and workshops. Now, it's been done in Kuala Lumpur, in Penang and also in Sarawak. So, Nina, can you tell us a little bit more about Jom Kita Bincang and its progress so far?
I'm actually quite new to this project, so I was invited for the program in Kuching, which is the day after tomorrow, and I'm invited to speak about how we in Sweden work with reading promotion and early literacy, and also literature for children connected to the rights of children. So maybe you, Redza, you know more about the project because you have been involved since the start, haven't you?
That's right.
Maybe you could tell.
Well, okay. Well, our involvement with Jom Kita Bincang came about at the inaugural session, which was held in the Shah Alam Library, which was a grand event. There was a talk, there was exhibition of the books, and there was a launch of translated Swedish stories into Malay. That was interesting, and I find that the substance in such an event was about the cultural exchange between the two countries, which was the most important. As I've mentioned to Nina, Malaysia remembers Sweden as IKEA and Volvo. That's right. You know, so the books came as something new, and the engagement with the people, and the Astrid Lindgren Award, and now with the Swedish Arts Council. For those of us who are involved in such industry, this is a welcome, welcome opportunity. Because we're meeting the experts, and there's so much that we can learn, and it will help our industry. So I'm very impressed by this initiative by the embassy, and the fact that they are willing to go around to several states. We were involved. I was involved in Selangor, Kuala Lumpur. The MBBY was involved. I was not present, but I was also involved in Penang. And even for me, we had different perspectives in each locations, which was very interesting. And we talked about different topics as well. And my realization is that the opportunities presented are vast in many ways. There are genres which are common in Sweden but may not be common in Malaysia. There are cultural challenges and differences that we have to discuss openly and find a middle path. And there are talent gaps,
Okay.
you know. So it'll be very interesting. We have books translated into Malay from Sweden. Perhaps one day be able to get Malaysian books translated into Swedish language, and we'll see how that comes along. So that's where we are, I think, and I look forward to seeing more of Jom Kita Bincang sessions, so that we can continue to understand better Sweden and its activities with regards to reading, promotions and so on.
Outside of IKEA, of course.
Yeah.
And this, of course, goes two ways. I mean, this is
Yeah.
also an opportunity for us from Sweden to come here and learn from Malaysia. So
Yeah.
it's very inspiring,
Yes.
interesting for me to be here
Yeah.
and meet different organizations and talk to people.
Very true. I agree.
Oh, that's great to hear. And Datuk, you mentioned, you know, the 3 Swedish books that have been translated to Malay. I assume this is something that would be increasing access for children to be able to read books from languages that they previously were not able to understand, books worldwide. What would you say is the importance of having these books from other countries, other cultures for our children?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, it's the window and mirror opportunity. So having the books in Malay opens a very large window to our children, because the stories that were presented to us were typical Swedish stories within the settings of their own country and their culture. And but these are good stories which has some value to take away from with regards to the way of life, the way they think, and the noble values that's presented. And for Malaysia, we have similar stories with similar values, but presented in a different way, you know, which is synonym with our culture and the way we approach things. We may not be so direct, you know, the Malaysian culture will be indirect, very subtle, but the Swedish culture may be very forthright, but that's an interesting discussion point. The translated books are not, to me, they are not purely just to be read, but we have to have guidance as well when we start reading them. The introduction that these stories emanate from a certain country and what we want to get from it, so that the readers or the audience will be pushed into having a greater interest, that you're reading something, you're getting something from elsewhere. You know, but if it's left just like that to read without reading promotion activities, it may not have the desired effect, in my mind.
But in this way, reading is also a way of traveling. I mean, you can't always travel the whole world, but by the books, you can give the children the whole world.
Yeah, gives us a chance to visit Sweden.
Yeah, of course.
True.
And Swedish children to visit Malaysia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, then, Nina, really drawing from the Swedish experience, then what lessons can you say we can learn about, you know, the effectiveness of using this literature for children to explore not just different countries and cultures, but also different topics, to spark that kind of discussion, to learn about more complex issues like sustainability, social justice, and their own rights?
I think I can go back to my own example of Ronja, the robber's daughter. I mean, in that story, it highlights so many different things. I mean, the respect for nature, the love of adventure, also the topic of relationships between children and grown-ups. So reading with your children is also an opportunity to speak about different topics, because maybe you won't find these topics in your everyday conversations, but reading together with your children will make you meet different challenges. Whatever the characters in the book meet, you also meet them. So it widens your perspective, and you will also in your mind have these experiences.
Dr. Redza, anything to add on with, you know, the power of stories, and how exactly can storytelling empower children to sort of express their feelings and to take part in discussions that allow them to learn about their rights?
Yeah, that's why I said the content. Basically, we're dealing with content here, children's stories and so on. a story that moves people. Sometimes a difficult topic that needs to be discussed can be conveyed through a story that will spark questions from your kids, for example. And that helps parents overcome that gap, the communication gap. At the same time, like today, we have movie nights in the house, Netflix and so on, you know. So we could switch that with reading nights, you know, a cozy environment and things like that. And the bonding, the togetherness actually may even spark sharing of experiences off the book, you know. And you'll be surprised how varied children's thinking are when they can actually relate the content of that story with something in their life or something within their own backyard. And that's very interesting. I mean, we've seen children of different nationalities at a certain age, they don't need to learn the language, but they have this communication skills where they could actually be playing without even talking to each other. We've seen that in life. So that's the importance of reading here, which because of the life challenges today, a lot of people do not make time for that. You know, it's always, you know, busy with everything else. Parents are busy, children are busy, traveling and so on. But that hour perhaps, or that 2 hours every Friday or Saturday will have a long-term effect. I mean, in my house, I have a corner where I read. I never force my children, but they've seen me in that corner consistently. So they know at a certain time where to look for me. You know, and eventually what they'll do is they sit and they'll pick up something to read. Well, not that I want to say that this is a foolproof thing, but I'm glad that they see that there's an opportunity to sit. They may not understand. You know, I read children's books now, much to the confusion of my family. You know, but as they grow older and they start reading, then they realize, oh, there's a lot of values or learnings coming off from children's books for adults. Adults should read children's books.
I totally agree. I also collect picture books because I find it so sad that after a certain age we're not supposed to read pictures anymore.
Just words.
It's just words. And then pictures is a wonderful language.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's amazing. Beyond language and culture, so we get better understanding. That's something perhaps a lot of people have yet to find as their forte.
You talked about the content and how important it is for children, but there's also the need to look at the people who are creating that content in the first place, right? Children's book writers. You know, do you notice any current initiatives to support budding book writers or illustrators? Is there any room for improvement in that regard? I know it's quite a heavy question, but
heavy, and
we
I
have to start somewhere, right?
I have to be careful with what I say. Well, yes, there's a lot of room to improve. At the moment, I think we're all obsessed with selling. But we're not so sure whether what we're selling is good enough or contributes to the development of children or the industry itself. So that's why in collaborating with Sweden Embassy, for example, or even Malaysia EBIM, MBBY with IBBY at the international level, where we have the opportunity to interact with so many other countries, we can actually benchmark ourselves at where we are and what else we need to do. Reading promotions, for example, is very important. Nina heads Bookstart in Sweden. That's a fantastic program. And I've been wanting to start Bookstart in Malaysia for many, many years. But I can't get the stakeholders to understand and support. But we're not giving up. So basically, apart from trying to sell books, we need to step back and look at the content developers. So it's not only authoring, it's also illustrations, which are very important for children. It also includes editing, because a book editor for children's stories is definitely different from a textbook editor. There are different rules. Book design as well. And then only we go about production and selling. So you'll find that imported books, when they come into Malaysia, they have their own followers because they're well done.
Oh.
And local production sometimes may not be able to do as well because of cost considerations, because of lack of expertise, and of course when it comes to selling, it's prices. You know, but these are not obstacles to my mind. These are mere challenges. Once people get used to it, they understand the value that these products bring about, they will be on with it. That's my belief, and I think it's happening slowly but surely.
And getting stakeholders, you said getting stakeholders to understand the importance of what they're doing, prioritizing our children's well-being and development over profit sometimes. Well, also with challenges comes opportunities, right? So before we end the show, I just wanted to ask the both of you, what opportunities do you think there are to better promote reading and literacy and love for books among our children? I know we've talked a little bit about the iPad or the phone and its distractions, or children's preference for cartoons over books. What opportunities do you see here for our children in the future? Shall we start with you, Nina?
As you said, I work with a project called Book Start, so we target families with really small children between 0 and 3 years old, and we want to make parents aware of their role and how they can stimulate the language development of their children by, for example, reading, but also singing and just playing with their kids. So empowering parents, I think it's important, and making them aware, giving them the tools, and also what you do. I mean, being a role model, being grown up, reading in front of children. I think that's very important. So grown-ups need to know, I mean, what they can do and how they can influence children. Their role.
And leading by example.
Yeah.
That there is.
Yeah, I echo Nina. Leading by example is very important because children are often impressed. You know, they're impressionable people. They have a very clean mind. You know, what they like, they see, they will emulate. So in Malaysia, the opportunities lie in developing a healthy reading culture, which should cover all walks of life, young to old, all levels of people. I hope it will start with the highest level, maybe the king and the queen and the prime minister and so on, you know, and we get that going on. Then on the side of it is the other challenges, which are the content, the editorial, the illustrations, the book design and selling. So bring those two together, then I think the opportunities are great because Malaysia is a multiracial country, multi-religious, multicultural, it's a colourful country, and there's so much stories to tell. I think that's where we are.
Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your insights with me. This has been It's About Youth with Nina Suatan and Datuk Ahmad Redza. Thank you for watching and see you next time.